Great. So yeah, we decided to do this virtually so we could reach as many people as possible and share the recording afterward and just have this information ready to share for folks. So thanks to everyone for coming. This is the 4 workshops that we are doing in this Maple Producer Workshop series as the Franklin County NRCD. Our first workshop was on funding opportunities for maple producers. That was also on Zoom and it is recorded. So if you're interested in the link, feel free to reach out to me. It's also on our YouTube. Our second workshop was in person and it was at Gagne Maple and it focused on forest management for maple producers. This is our third workshop on organic certification. And then our next workshop in 2 weeks from now, on Thursday, November 7th, we're going to be visiting a sugar bush in Underhill. And we will be focusing on water quality and acceptable management practices for maple producers. So if you are interested in that, it's going to be a fun in-person workshop. So you can RSVP at franklincountynrcd.org/assistance for maple producers. And some other opportunities we have this fall, we are doing maple producer AMP site visits. So we can come and visit your sugar bush specifically and answer questions you might have about stream crossings, forest roads, water quality, erosion. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out. And we also have portable skidder bridge rentals available. So we have 2 bridges available. If you're looking to get across a stream and follow the acceptable management practices while you're out in the woods, this is a really great opportunity to do so. And then at the end of the workshop, I'm going to ask you to fill out a survey. Okay. So that's all for me. I'll introduce Nick from Vermont Organic Farmers. Thank you, Nick.
You're welcome. Thanks, Mel. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can everybody see my slideshow? Yes.
Yes.
Great. All right. Thanks for having me tonight. It's good to see all these faces online. So I'm Nick Sibley. I am a certification specialist and the Maple Team lead for Vermont Organic Farmers. A little bit of background on Vermont Organic Farmers, who we are, what we do. So Vermont Organic Farmers, also known as VOF, is a USDA accredited certification agency that's owned by NOFA Vermont. So since 1985, we've been providing third-party verification of organic food production in Vermont. And since 2002, we've been accredited by the USDA National Organic Program. So we currently certify close to 800 farms and food producers, 245 of which are maple producers. So maple is actually our #1 production type that we certify. So we certify more maple operations than we do dairy or crop or food processors. A little more about us. So what is being owned by a nonprofit do for us? So it allows us to focus on our values and focus on providing basically a quality service. And because we're owned by NOFA Vermont, we can put more effort into customer service, upholding strong standards, and focus a little less on just trying to turn a profit. Of course, we need to pay our bills and pay our staff, but we don't have the same, the same dollar value or, dollars driving us that some other certification agencies have. What this also allows us to do is work with producers more on developing our organic standards. So one of the ways we do this, every year we have a annual producers meeting where all of our certified organic producers are invited to come and vote on any changes to the standards. So, for example, this year we have a couple of proposed changes to our maple standards, and sugar makers, our certified sugar makers, can actually come, speak in favor of or against these proposed changes and vote yay or nay. These new changes should be implemented. And our certified operations can also propose new standards or propose changes to the standards. So that's really unique. I don't know of any other certification agency that actually has opportunities for the certified businesses to come and have a say on the standards. So how is the organic program structured? So the National Organic Program is housed within the USDA, and as I just said, the National Organic Program is our accreditor. The USDA does the accreditation of certifiers, but does not certify operations themselves. So we get this question a lot. I'm sure you've seen the USDA certified logos around. So it's not actually the USDA that's doing the certification, they're just accrediting the certifiers. Um, there's one set of national standards, but there are no specific regulations for maple within the USDA. So certifiers kind of have their own guidelines. And VOF was really a pioneer in developing the organic standards for maple. So about 12 years ago, we went through this process where we engaged a lot of sugar makers and foresters around Vermont to kind of help us come up with a sensible set of standards for organic certification for sugar makers. Some background on who can use the term organic. So use of the term organic is highly regulated by the USDA. Only producers certified by the USDA, by a USDA accredited certifier can use the term organic, except there are two exemptions to this. Basically, if you make less than $5,000, if your gross sales of organic products are less than $5,000, you can market and sell your products as organic. You can't sell those products to a a processor who then uses that as an ingredient in a certified organic product. Like for example, if I was covered under this exemption and I sold syrup to somebody who wanted to use it in a batch of granola, and they wanted that granola to be certified organic, they wouldn't be able to call that granola organic if I'm not actually uh, if I haven't gone through the certification process. So that syrup itself can be sold as organic, but it can't be used in certified organic processed products. The second exemption are any retailers and restaurants can advertise their food as organic without getting certified. So if a restaurant is using organic ingredients to create a dish, they don't need to be certified. So now I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts of the organic standards for maple. A lot of people don't realize this, but forest management is really a key component of organic certification for maple producers. So VOF requires a written forest management plan for each property used for sap collection. So if you're already enrolled in current use, you're kind of ahead of the curve on this. So most of our certified operations happen to be enrolled in current use. You don't have to be enrolled in current use, but those who are enrolled know that it requires a forest management plan. And so our standards were developed to align with the current use standards. So all of the required components of a forest management plan align with what's required under current use. So some specifics on what we need to see within your sugar bush. We need to see forest diversity. So we like to see a minimum of 25% non-sugar maple tree species. If you have less than that, say you have 90% sugar maples in your sugar bush. That doesn't disqualify you from certification, but we want to know what your plan is to achieve diversity. Like, what are you going to do? How are you going to manage those woods so that in the future you can achieve those diversity requirements? We also require uneven aged management. So not only do we want to see a diversity of species, but we want to see a diversity of tree sizes and tree ages. We require that you maintain biodiversity, protect ecologically sensitive areas, and wildlife habitat. So what does this mean? So a good example of this, if you have invasive plants in your sugar bush. So invasive plants are a threat to the forest health and biodiversity. So if you have invasive plants, we want to know what are you doing to manage and eradicate those invasives. And there are approved practices and methods in organic sugar bushes for eradicating invasives. So cutting, hand pulling. When it gets into things like herbicide application, obviously with organic certification, there are a lot of requirements around applying chemicals, pesticides, herbicides to the land. And so that's something we only want to see as a last resort. If you have like a few invasive plants scattered throughout your sugar bush, we do allow you to spot treat those plants, but you can't tap any trees within a certain distance. And depending on how you apply those herbicides, kind of dictates the buffer that we require you put in place. So say, for example, you have honeysuckle and you cut it and you do a stump application of an herbicide to kill that honeysuckle. So we want to see a 15-foot buffer. So no trees tapped within 15 feet of that herbicide application. Um, if you're spraying herbicide, we want to see a bigger buffer just because the spray is less targeted, right? So if you spray, say, honeysuckle in your sugar bush, um, we might want to see a 30-foot buffer. So no trees tapped within 30 feet of that application area. Um, if you have invasives throughout your entire sugar bush, I recommend that you get that under control and then kind of come back and pursue organic certification. It's not that we don't allow that, but it becomes much more complicated. If you have an entire forest stand that needs to be treated, it's really difficult to establish a buffer around that, obviously. Um, Other requirements, so we don't allow whole tree harvest. For those who don't know, whole tree harvest is when a logger comes in, cuts a tree, and removes that entire tree, like trunk, crown, limbs, and all, drags it out of the woods, and then processes that tree on the landing, cuts the crown off, and cuts that tree into saw logs. So basically, that entire tree is being removed from the forest. And what happens when all of that, when the entire crown is removed, there's nothing left to rot and decompose and kind of give back to the forest and give back to the soil, obviously. We do allow logging in sugar bushes, but it can't be a whole tree harvest. During any timber harvests, we require that damage to residual trees be minimized as much as possible. Um, and we also want to see that forest roads are being protected and that erosion prevention practices are being implemented. So we don't want to see like a forest road and forest road eroding and causing runoff that goes into a stream. So again, we want to protect our natural resources. Tapping practices. Um, So drop line lengths need to be at least 24 inches. The reason we do this is to help ensure that folks are spreading tap holes around the entire tree. As we all know, if you're kind of tapping in a single area or a single band, there's dead non-conductive tissue created every time you tap a tree. Um, and so to spread that out and prevent the possibility of girdling, we require long drop lines so that you have more access to the surface of that tree and can spread out your tap holes. You can't tap trees that are less than 9 inches in diameter, and a tree needs to be at least 15 inches in diameter to receive a second tap. Um, Retapping a previously tapped tree during the same season or reaming or refreshing a tap hole is not permitted. So you can't tap in, say, late December, and then your tap holes are starting to dry out in late April, and come back and ream them out and try to get more out of that. We don't allow that. So, just um, a single drill hole per season, essentially. We also require that spouts be pulled within 60 days after sap flow ends. So basically, sugaring season stops. sap stops running, you basically have 60 days to get in the woods and remove all those spouts. So we don't want to see, trees that still have the spouts in them in July, for example, for obvious reasons. Sap collection and storage. So tubing systems, especially the ways any nails, hooks, and wires are just installed, cannot pose a risk to tree health. So where I most frequently see this is unprotected support wires that are wrapped around trees and are growing into the trees and actually girdling and damaging the trees. So we don't want to see that, obviously. Um, any plastic that comes into contact with sap or syrup must be food grade. Sap storage tanks must be inside or covered. Um, Closed tanks are considered covered. So if you have a totally enclosed tank with a hatch and it's outside, that counts as a covered tank. This is surprisingly one of the areas where we get the most pushback. So it's not uncommon to see open top sap tanks sitting outside uncovered. Um, and to cover that, it doesn't need to be a building over it or an elaborate roof over it. You can literally just throw a couple of 2x4s across the top of that tank and throw a tarp over it just to prevent any potential contaminants, any critters or bird droppings, just things you don't want in the sap, just to prevent that from actually getting in the sap at the sap tank. Pretty common sense. Uh, it doesn't need to be difficult. Um, we also require lead testing if you have any galvanized brass, bronze, or copper equipment in contact with sap or syrup. Um, so all of these items are known to contain lead. I get a lot of questions about copper. Why is copper okay with drinking water, but not okay with sap? That's because sap tends to be more acidic than water and can actually cause the lead in the copper piping to leach out into the sap. Um, and so obviously that's an issue. We don't want um, our certified producers making syrup that's contaminated with lead. A lot of people often say, well, what does it matter? It's being boiled. Well, with contaminants in particular, if you had lead contamination that's coming in to the sap and you boil it, there's actually potential to concentrate that contamination. It doesn't boil out. It's still there. And the boiling process can, like I said, actually concentrate it and exacerbate the issue. Syrup production. Um, So for most producers, the biggest change from going from conventional syrup production to organic is going to be the use of defoamers. So synthetic defoamers are not allowed. So what defoamers are allowed then? So any certified organic vegetable oils, so an organic sunflower oil, safflower oil, canola oil, that's allowed as a defoamer. CDL also has a product. It's called Transo 580, which has been reviewed by the Organic Materials Review Institute and has been approved for use in organic maple syrup production. So again, organic vegetable oils and CDL's Transo 580. So that's the entire list essentially. Last year we had a situation where a local equipment dealer was selling a product called Suppressor Org 60 and selling it as OMRI approved. And it turned out OMRI had done an approval, but had only approved it for use in products that are labeled as made with organic ingredients, not for certified organic syrup. So that product actually wasn't allowed. Luckily, only a handful of our producers had purchased it, so we were able to kind of catch it before it became an issue. Um, but again, that product is called Suppressor Org 60. If you see anybody marketing or selling that for use to organic producers, please send them my way. More on syrup production. There must be no risk of contamination of exposed syrup by prohibited substances. So, for example, we don't want to see, a glass light bulb over your canning unit that could shatter and potentially fall into the syrup. Common sense things like that. you want to minimize any risk of contamination. Storage containers and boiling equipment need to be made of food grade materials. For the most part, this isn't an issue for most folks. They're packing in food grade jugs, packing in stainless steel barrels or food grade plastic barrels. It's not very common that we see an issue with this. When you're producing your syrup, you can't have any discharge of wastewater into adjacent surface waters. So what's an example of this? So probably the most common thing is your RO. So the permeate that comes out of your RO, um, you don't want to be sending that out of the sugar house and into an adjacent stream where the heat of that permeate can actually cause issues with that stream. Um, More on syrup production. Syrup drums need to be cleaned and rinsed prior to use. That's pretty self-explanatory, especially if you're selling to a bulk producer. Say they've sanitized that drum with some unknown chemical. We want to know that you're rinsing that drum out and making sure it's clean and it's food safe before you put your fresh syrup in it. The cost of organic certification. So this is a question I get all the time. Basically, the cost of certification depends on your estimated gross sales of organic products. So the more you make, kind of the more you pay, essentially. Um, Last year in 2023, some of our smallest operations paid around $650 for their certification fee. Some really big operations obviously paid significantly more than that. So obviously, excuse me, bigger operations take more time, more work for us to go out, do the inspection, to verify their practices. And so we have to charge more. That being said, there is a federal cost share program that will reimburse you up to 75% of the cost of certification, up to $750 per scope. So what I mean by scope is in organic certification, the USDA National Organic Program has identified three certification types: crop, livestock, and processing. So what we've done is we have put our certified maple producers into the crop and processing scopes. And so you can apply for reimbursement under either scope. So the crop scope covers your sap and the processing scope covers your syrup. So for example, say your certification fee is $1,000. You can apply for cost share reimbursement and get reimbursed $750 of that $1,000 certification fee. And this program is administered through FSA and the Vermont Agency of Agriculture. If you already have accounts in FSA, it's pretty easy. Go, fill out a simple form and, a couple weeks later, you get a check in the mail. Similarly, if you are not in the FSA system, you can go through the Agency of Ag. It's literally a one-page form. We actually pre-fill it for you. It takes less than 10 minutes to fill out. You send it to the Agency of Ag, and you get a 75% reimbursement. I hear people say all the time, I can't afford the cost of organic certification. And I wonder if the people who say that know that they actually can be reimbursed for most of the cost. So the certification process. So if you're interested in being certified, how do you go about that? So step one, basically you give us a call, send us an email, say I'm interested in certification. What do I need to do? We collect some basic information, get you set up with an account in our system. And when the annual Maple application goes live, which on November 15th of this year, the Maple application for 2025 goes live. So we get you in our system and you get a notification on November 15th saying, okay, our application is live, log in here to fill out our application. If you have a hard time with technology and would rather a paper application, we can mail you a paper application that you fill out by hand. Um, so you fill out that application, kind of depending on your business and the products you're making, whether or not you have any value-added products. You can anticipate spending, maybe 3 or 4 hours the first time you work on the application. It's fairly robust. It's like 18 pages long. It does take a bit of work to get through it. What I will say, however, is that we save all of your responses from year to year. So say you get certified in 2025. When the 2026 application goes live, we take all of your application responses from the previous year and put them in your 2026 application. So basically, all you need to do is read through. If there are any changes, if you want to revise any of your answers, you make those changes and you click submit. So the first year is definitely the hardest. So it's definitely kind of a push to get everything in that first year. But once you get through that first year, it is a lot easier, and the application process itself is really streamlined from there on. So you submit your application, and we require you to submit at least half of your certification fee before we do a formal review and then assign an inspector. Um, so we receive half of your certification fee. A certification specialist reads through your application, flags any potential issues, and then signs your inspector for the year for that annual certification cycle. So the inspector comes out, meets with you, looks at your sugar house, looks at your equipment and talks through your production practices, goes out, looks at your woods, looks at your records, does some audits, which we'll talk about in a little more detail later, um, and basically prepares a report, just kind of logging their observations. What did they see? What are any potential issues? And that inspection report is sent back to the VOF office. So again, it goes back to a certification specialist. They review that inspection report. They decide, is there any additional follow-up needed? Are there any actual issues that were identified during the inspection? Is this business eligible for certification? And assuming everything's good, the certification is processed and you receive your certificate. Even if issues are identified, unless it's a really huge issue, in most cases, you will still receive your certificate, but you receive a notice outlining the issue that was identified, and you're given a time frame to bring that into noncompliance, to resolve that issue. So say, for example, you don't have a forest management plan, or your forest management plan has expired. Oftentimes what will happen is you get your certificate, but when you receive your certificate, you get a notice saying, okay, this is a non-compliance, and you have 60 days to give us a time frame for when this expired forest management plan will be updated. Within 60 days, send us a statement, and we can give you, knowing that updates to forest management plans can take a really long time. We can give you a year to kind of get that resolved. A lot of consulting foresters are booked way out. And so we really try to not trap people and have issue deadlines that can't be met, essentially. So you receive your certificate, and every year this is an annual process, right? So every year on or around November 15th, you'll receive a notice saying, okay, it's time to submit your annual application. And every year you submit that annual application, pay your certification fee, and get inspected on an annual basis. So record keeping, one of the biggest challenges for producers who are becoming certified organic is just the records that are required. Um, a lot of people or some people, it's not an issue at all. Like if you have really good sap collection logs, production logs, sales records, you know, you might be good to go. Um, but basically, we require that any certified operations keep records that demonstrate their compliance with regulations. So, say you do some logging in your woods. We want you to kind of just keep a basic log of where that logging was done, what was cut, how was it cut, so that when you are inspected the following year, the inspector can kind of go out and just make sure that everything looks okay. Um, Again, yeah, we ask that you fully disclose all activities and transactions. So if you're buying in any inputs, ingredients, or processing aids, keep records of those purchases. So say you're making a value-added product and you're buying in some ingredient from another certified operation. We want you to keep the organic certification from that supplier, and keep a sales receipt so that we can verify, okay, yes, actually they did, they have proof verifying that they purchased these certified organic ingredients from this other business. Um, for organic certification, you need to producers need to maintain records of their activities that span the time of purchase or acquisition through production to sale or transport, and must maintain records that trace back to the last certified operations in their supply chain and forward to their customers. So what does this mean? So during your annual inspection, there are going to be two audits that are conducted. One is a traceability audit. A traceability audit demonstrates that an organic product can be traced back to its origin in the operation. So basically what happens is the inspector will look at your sales records and say, okay, you sold a drum of syrup on this date. Let's go back and look at your production records and make sure we can trace this drum of syrup from the sale back through production to the source, right? So it's just making sure that in the event you needed to do a recall per se, that you could actually uh, identify where that product went. Say you realize that on, March 1st, your evaporator had a contamination issue and the barrels of syrup that were produced that day were all contaminated. Um, Having good records would allow you to identify where exactly that syrup ended up in the event of a recall. The other audit we do is a mass balance audit. And a mass balance audit demonstrates that enough organic ingredients or products were purchased, produced, harvested, or managed to equate to the final product during the audited time period. So what does that mean? So basically, we want to look at your production capacity and compare it to what you actually made, right? So let's say you have enough taps to make 10,000 gallons of syrup, but we look at your production records and, and your production records say that you made 20,000 gallons of syrup. Well, then that brings up the question, where did that extra 10,000 gallons come from? It's basically that is a way of trying to identify fraud within the organic system. It's not so much an issue in sugar makers in Vermont. Um, but out west in the grain world, organic fraud is a real thing. And there have been really well documented cases of um, basically certified organic grain producers bringing in uncertified product that they didn't produce themselves and selling it as organic. So again, the mass balance audit. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at like your spout receipts. We're going to look at your forest management plan and say, okay, this person has 100 taps or 100 acres tapped at a rate of 70 taps per acre. Um, they're declaring 7,000 taps. They have a spout purchase receipt for 7,000 taps. How much could a 7,000 tap operation produce annually? And we basically look at that projected yield or what you could expect to make off a 7,000 tap operation, and again compare it to your production and sales records and just make sure that everything lines up and there aren't any questions. So for anybody interested in organic certification, there's a new program that just came out last year. It's called the Transition to Organic Partnership Program, TOP. So TOP is investing up to $100 million over 5 years in cooperative agreements with nonprofit organizations such as Nova Vermont, or partnering with others to provide technical assistance to support transitioning and existing organic farmers. So basically, it's a farmer to farmer mentorship program. So if you're interested in organic certification and you want to participate in this program, we can connect you with a experienced certified producer who maybe has been doing this for 5 or 10 or 15 years, and they basically act as your mentor through the application process. So they work with you over the course of a year. We budget 45 hours of time for them to help you kind of plan ahead, get all your ducks in a row, and work through the application process and work through the transition from conventional syrup production to organic syrup production process. Um, for folks who are mentors, just in case there are any experienced organic producers in the audience, if you participate in this program, you can actually get $3,000 for a 45-hour commitment to mentor another sugar maker. Any questions? Is there anything that you want me to go back to that I wasn't clear on, or you want more clarification?
I was going to ask if there's any technical assistance available for that application process. So it's really great to see the top program. I wasn't aware of that.
Mhm. Yeah, there definitely is technical assistance available. So NOFA Vermont just created a new position. So we actually have a dedicated staff member whose job is to provide technical assistance, and that can be in a variety of forms. So she works with sugar makers and crop producers and livestock folks. So if you're having a hard time navigating your application, I can connect you with her, and she can kind of help you through the process. Um, that being said, so technical assistance requests that require a lot of time, we're kind of sending to her. Um, that being said, we also VOF, we really pride ourselves on our customer service. So um, if anybody has any questions, always encourage my certified producers, give me a call. If you're having a hard time with a particular section of your application, give me a call. I'll stay on the phone with you as you go question by question. We'll talk through each question and I'll help you figure out how to respond to those questions. Um, in the same way, if you have an inspection and an inspector, identified several potential issues and you don't understand why, give me a call. We'll talk through it and we'll figure it out. So anything that comes up, we encourage our clients to just reach out, let us know if and how we can help.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Yep.
We have a question in the chat about whether or not the slides will be available. And we will be sharing a recording if you want that as well.
Yep. Yeah, I would say if you want a copy of this slideshow, give me a call or email me at so this is the general VOF email account that's linked on this page, but you can reach me directly at nick@vermontorganic.org. So if you want a copy of the slides, shoot me an email and I can send you a copy.
I have one more question actually.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the organic requirements for preventing road erosion. Are those in line with the Vermont Forest Parks and Rec acceptable management practices, or are they kind of different? How are they related?
That's a great question. So basically, um, yeah, so we have really tried to develop all of our forest management practices to align with FPR standards. So yes, to the best of our ability, we have kind of aligned them with those best management practices. Um, that being said, it's actually surprisingly uncommon to see real issues. There were some issues that popped up with woods erosion after the flooding last year. Um, but for us, like, you know, if we know that the producer is actively doing what they can to manage that and prevent it, that's kind of all we can ask. That makes sense?
Yes, definitely.
And
Um,
I had actually a question about the forest management plan. Can you talk a little more about that and what that requires? And is there a cost associated to that?
Yeah, so um, basically, the forest management plan process is you'll want to hire a consulting forester to develop a plan for you, and they're going to need to write a plan that meets um, Vermont's current use standards. Essentially, like I mentioned, our forest management plan requirements were designed to align with the current use requirements. That doesn't mean you need to enroll in current use. We have several certified operations that are not enrolled in current use, but the plan basically needs to be written to current use standards. And there's kind of a whole lot of documentation online kind of describing what those standards are. Basically, what we want to see is any areas you're tapping, we want to see the results of a forest inventory. We want to know the species composition. We want to know uh, we want to see information on the age of that forest stand. So is it an even age stand? Is it uneven aged? We want to know about any sensitive natural resources, any wetlands, any streams, any potential issues like invasive plants. Um, and we want to know what your management objectives are. And for a sugar maker, one of your objectives should be sap production, right? Um, and if you reach out to me, if you're interested, I can provide you with a list of consulting foresters who work in your area. And basically, what happens is once the consulting forester has drafted your plan, they send it to the county forester, and the county forester will need to review it and approve it. So again, even if you're not enrolling in current use, we have an agreement with the county foresters where they do review non-current use forest management plans for certified or folks seeking organic certification. Um, Mel, I'm curious, can you speak to any like NRCS resources for funding forest management plan development?
I do believe there is funding to help develop forest management plans. I also have a webinar link that the Vermont Maple Sugar Makers Association recorded with folks from NRCS about funding from NRCS in general. So I'm going to grab that really quickly and put it in the chat.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Okay, I've got the NRCS funding webinar for folks who are interested. Just put that in the chat. I also shared a couple of other links. If you're interested in coming to our water quality maple workshop, please sign up. That's happening in a couple weeks. If you want an individual site visit, there's a link to register for that. And it would be really helpful if folks could also fill out the webinar survey just so we can get some feedback. It really helps us continue to do this work and improve. And we'd love to keep working with maple producers and providing resources and education. So thank you. And thank you, Nick, so much. Great presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, happy to be here, and yeah, nice to see you all.
Yeah, and so this is Tammy Farnham again. Sorry, I have one more question. Do you know how the organic certification is in line with the maple certification?
You mean VMSMA's Sugar House Food Safety Certification Program?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, Basically, the two programs really dovetail together quite nicely. If you go through one, it's really going to help you with the other. Um, so we are in frequent contact with VMSMA. If we do an inspection and we identify some potential food safety issues, we refer folks to VMSMA. And it's really great because say we, identify some equipment that contains lead. We can send folks to VMSMA, and VMSMA actually has funding to help producers resolve those issues. So they might actually help you if you go through their process, their certification program. They might help you replace that equipment or implement whatever changes are needed. So to go through both at the same time, it's definitely a lot of work, but there are also a lot of benefits um, that could potentially come from it. And yeah, I think that's all. That's all I have there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, Nick, I had one more question. I remember discussing at the last organic workshop that there are sometimes like price increases for organic maple producers.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Thank you for asking that question. So yeah, I mean, um, talking about like why get certified, what are the benefits? So not only, as I'm sure, some of you are aware, not only can it kind of boost your potential to get shelf space, boost your retail market, open up new opportunities, but for folks who sell bulk syrup, there are price premiums, right? So I think the current bulk price premium is 15 to 20 cents a pound. So for producers making thousands of gallons of syrup, it's kind of a financial no-brainer. That price premium can really add up and can more than pay for the cost of certification.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that there's no more questions before we head out for the day. All right, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very
Wonderful
much.
night. Thanks.